The crowd in the street hail him as a man who has been the deliverer of his fellow creatures, honoring him more than the monarch who has stormed a city, sacked a town, and murdered myriads. But alas, the body which was saved from death today may die tomorrow. Not so the soul that is saved from death. It is saved everlastingly. It is saved beyond the fear of destruction. And if there be joy in the breast of a benevolent man, when he saves a body from death, how much more blessed must he be when he is made the means in the hand of God of saving a soul from death and hiding a multitude of sins. It was Richard Knill, that blessed missionary of the cross, to whom I am personally so deeply indebted, who said that if there were only one unconverted person in the whole world, and if that person lived in the wilds of Siberia, and if every Christian minister and every private believer in the world had to make a pilgrimage to that spot before that soul were brought to Christ, the labor would be well expended if that one soul were so saved. This is putting the truth in a striking way, but in a way in which everyone who realizes the value of immortal souls will heartily concur. When I began to preach in the little thatched chapel at Waterbeach, my first concern was, would God save any souls through me? They called me a ragged-headed boy, and I think I was just that. I know I wore a jacket. After I had preached for some little time, I thought, this gospel has saved me. But then somebody else preached it. Will it save anybody else now that I preach it? Some Sundays went over, and I used to say to the deacons, have you heard of anybody finding the Lord under my ministry? Do you know of anyone brought to Christ through my preaching? My good old friend and deacon said, I am sure somebody must have received the Saviour. I am quite certain it is so. Oh, I answered, but I want to know it. I want to prove that it is so. My heart leaped for joy when I heard tidings of my first convert. I could never be satisfied with a full congregation and the kind expressions of friends. I longed to hear that hearts had been broken, that tears had been seen streaming from the eyes of penitents. How I did rejoice as one that findeth great spoil one Sunday afternoon, when my good deacon said to me, God has set his seal on your ministry in this place, sir. Oh, if anybody had said to me, someone has left you £20,000, I should not have given a snap of my fingers for it, compared with the joy which I felt when I was told that God had saved a soul through my ministry. Who is it? I asked. Oh, it is a poor labouring man's wife over at such and such a place. She went home broken-hearted by your sermon 2 or 3 Sundays ago, and she has been in great trouble of soul, but she has found peace, and she says she would like to speak to you. I said, will you drive me over there? I must go to see her. And early on the Monday morning I was driving down to the village my deacon had mentioned, to see my first spiritual child. I have in my eye now the cottage in which she lived. Believe me, it always appears picturesque. I felt like the boy who has earned his first guinea, or a diver who has been down to the depths of the sea and brought up a rare pearl. I prize each one whom God has given me, but I prize that woman most. Since then, my Lord has blessed me to many thousands of souls who have found the Saviour by hearing or reading words which have come from my lips. I have had a great many spiritual children born of the preaching of the word, but I still think that woman was the best of the lot. At least, she did not live long enough for me to find many faults in her. After a year or two of faithful witness bearing, she went home to lead the way for a goodly number who have followed her. I remember well her being received into the church, and dying and going to heaven. She was the first seal to my ministry, and a very precious one. No mother was ever more full of happiness at the sight of her firstborn son. Then could I have sung the song of the Virgin Mary, for my soul did magnify the Lord for remembering my low estate, and giving me the great honour to do a work for which all generations should call me blessed. For so I counted, and still count, the conversion of one soul. I would rather be the means of saving a soul from death than be the greatest orator on earth. I would rather bring the poorest woman in the world to the feet of Jesus than I would be made Archbishop of Canterbury. I would sooner pluck one single brand from the burning than explain all mysteries. To win a soul from going down into the pit is a more glorious achievement than to be crowned in the arena of theological controversy as Dr. Sufficientissimus. To have faithfully unveiled the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ will be, in the final judgment, accounted worthier service than to have solved the problems of the religious sphinx, or to have cut the Gordian knot of apocalyptic difficulty. One of my happiest thoughts is that when I die, it shall be my privilege to enter into rest, into the bosom of Christ. And I know that I shall not enjoy my heaven alone. Thousands have already entered there who have been drawn to Christ under my ministry. Oh, what bliss it will be to fly to heaven and to have a multitude of converts before and behind, and on entering the glory, to be able to say, "Here am I, Father, and the children thou hast given me."